Oh, it's the end of the day. We can do bourbon.
You can do bourbon.
I know that's your favorite
topic.
That's your favorite
Paul's
thing
favorite.
to
My
participate
favorite
in.
topic.
Paul's favorite.
Not.
You ever had any of this little golden magic?
I'm again it.
You're again it. Just smell it.
It smells like cleaning fluid or something. I don't know.
That smells like heaven's cooking. That's what that smells like.
Yeah.
They're going to be serving Blanton's at the marriage supper of the Lamb.
Like closed doors to me.
Closed
All
doors.
right. All right. Here we go. New episode of the Misfit Social podcast, and our guest today, a very special guest for me, Steve Nance. He is the founder of Tunco. He's also the chairman, and you may recognize the last name. He's also my father. So welcome to the pod.
Thank you, my son.
Welcome, Steve.
Good to have you with us.
How did you create such a misfit? I mean, that was my first question
Yeah,
that I
is
wanted.
Misfit Social, right?
I mean, did you not teach him like just fit in, or
I wanted to be a radical.
did you?
Yeah.
Just working out.
It's all by
Yeah.
design.
Well, I think some of it could be tied to SEC trips. So for those of the Southeastern Conference, like the college
Yeah.
sports.
Okay. I thought it was something else.
Yeah,
I thought it was a business acronym.
No. I know you're a
No,
Buckeye
no.
and all, but
No.
this
Yeah,
is
yes,
You
Is
saying
it-
that when Ohio State actually plays against real teams? Is
yeah,
that
when
what you're
Ohio
saying?
State
Oh, yeah.
plays against a real
So we're
team.
going there.
Yeah, we're going there. Yeah.
Ha-ha.
Yeah, and I don't even care about sports. I just don't like the Buckeyes.
Oh,
So
wow, it's getting worse.
It's just,
I'm with you.
It's just
We're in alignment.
He's like, I'm out. I'm out.
Perfect. Mission accomplished.
Yeah, get out of here. Get this guy.
Between that and that over there, I'm out of here.
Between the bourbon and the Buckeye disapproval, I'm out of here.
Is he as bad as Mr. Donner?
No, nobody's
No,
as bad.
Rob.
Nobody's as bad as Rob. Now, when I lived in Ohio with him, I met a few other fanatics, but yeah. So why don't you open us up with one of your favorite SEC stories?
Whoa. Is this adult rated or what?
Yes. Yeah, we have an adult audience.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
And feel
wow.
free to change the names. Like you can blame somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, you could
I'm
have
gonna
done
start sweating
something,
too, I
but
think.
you,
I'm sweating now.
but you throw somebody else under the
Okay.
bus.
I've already started to sweat too.
Oh, we used to go to the SEC tournament almost every year for about 10 years, about 6 of us. And one that comes to memory is we were in Birmingham. And me and my friend of mine, we used to wrestle a lot, just like kids. We would wrestle, just different occasions. I think
I'm trying to picture this, but
we
go
got,
ahead. Yeah.
we got pretty rowdy. And he was a coal miner. And on this particular trip, we had a young man. It was his first trip. He still lives here in town. He still talks about this. He's an insurance agent now, I think. But he observed this little wrestling match that actually was my brother-in-law. And so we got each other in a headlock and we wrestled. Well, he's a coal miner. And coal miners are famous for always having new tools at their home. Just kind of found them at the well, this guy had about a 6-inch pair of brand new blue-handled channel locks. And somehow, I don't know how he made the maneuver on them, but he got my little pinky toe with these channel locks.
Man, this is for MMA, I guess.
Oh yeah.
We had to do something to entertain ourselves.
That's a BJJ move.
He had me by the toe. I mean, he had me. Long story short,
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
I had to make a move. So I come around I knew I was going to bleed, but I come around with a crossover on my leg, knocked him off the bed. The skin on my toe went with him, but I got loose. But the young man that was with us on our first trip, he probably wasn't 20 years old. He got his stuff together, packed his bag, and went outside. And from Birmingham, he was going to try to find a ride back to Madison.
I'm out of
We
here.
scared him
Sort
to
of like
death.
I was just about to walk out of this podcast.
Yeah, so that's an example of
Yeah.
how did he raise such a misfit? I
Oh.
mean,
There you go. Yeah.
Wow.
Channel lock on your
Front
pinky
row
toe.
seat.
yeah. We're going to leave the fact that they were wrestling on a bed. We'll just leave that.
Well, we had an
Oh,
audience. We had an audience.
Well, even so, that's, that doesn't make it any
It was
better.
30 people.
He's like, he said, we were on the bed and I almost had him in that rear naked choke.
We were like the early Greeks in the Olympics.
I really am out of here now.
Oh my goodness.
This is going south really
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah, well.
My whole mind, I know we need to move on, but it's like, what are channel locks doing that close to whatever was going on?
How does
Just
that end up?
There's a bright new
Yeah.
pair of channel locks.
He
that
had
are
him
available.
stuffed between the mattresses.
Just in case.
Here we
Yeah, it was
go.
pre-planned.
Well, he did. He brought them with something like that in mind. It was not, the channel locks did not happen to be there. He also had duct tape, which was
My
used
Lord.
in different
This is getting
stories,
bad.
but
Wrestling a
that's
serial
that's
killer.
a different story.
Premeditated.
It's a good story.
Oh my gosh.
We
that's
had so
funny.
much fun in Ireland when we went with y'all. And me and Steve, there's a fly in here.
Yeah, that's going to be great for the camera. What you
Anyway.
eat for lunch? It's
I
all
don't
around
know,
your
man.
mouth.
We have a second guest.
Yeah, your beard stinks. It's just like
We had a lot
flying
of
all
fun,
around.
me and Steve, watching you guys be retarded.
Mhm.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So that's a little bit on how I became such a misfit. But we know you really well. But maybe some of our listeners, maybe they've seen you on Google, if they've looked up Tongue, been to our website or whatever. But why don't you give us just a little bit of Steve Nance's story and just talk about some of your past and some things that stand out to you throughout your life.
Okay, it's kind of funny that you asked me to do this because about 2 weeks ago I was asked to take a group of our, I won't say they're interns, but pretty young people from work down to our previous old location, and it did bring back a lot of memories. Most of them good, some of them not so good. But I feel like when I tell the whole story, I tell it all the time, and it sounds like to me it gets old. But my story is basically, I started. Well, I told these kids. I started in 1969, and when I told them, I said it was during the war was that World War I or World War II? I said
That question got asked?
yeah. I said
They weren't being facetious.
Vietnam. No.
Okay.
And I said Vietnam, but
that far back.
forget that. So I shifted gears and quit saying what year it was, and kind of told them. I said, I think this year we will have been in business. I will have been in business 55 years. So I gave them this scenario. I was on the barn. I started in a barn with the help of my father. And for about 8 years, I worked out of the barn. And there's a lot of caveats there. I went to Texas, Fort Worth, had a kind of a mentor fellow that helped me. He was buying my tungsten, but he also, on the farm, I was using a coal forge to extract the tungsten for the bits. He had gas furnace, real similar to what you'd see today at Tunco. And so I would go out there. And so about the first 8 years, we were on the barn at the farm doing that. And in 77, and again, as a reference, I gave these kids, I said, now 77, we built this place, is Hanson, Kentucky, which is about 6 miles north of Madisonville. And we built a pole barn, about a 40 by 80 pole barn. I told them, best
Thought
of
you
my
hit the
memory.
big time, right?
Hit the big time. We did.
Yeah.
We did. Actually, the 70s and the inflation were good for being in the commodity business,
Oh, wow.
which I had no idea at the time, but we benefited from it. So I built this 40 by 80 pole barn. Now you guys imagine, I spent $7,000
Oh,
for this
Good
building.
Lord.
wow.
That probably
Wow.
didn't count the bulldoze work. But then we added a couple more buildings. But so I told them that was 77. And I said, now, to get a reference, Ryan Sizemore happened to be down there with us. And Cliff and Ryan are real close to the same age. I said, I know you guys think Cliff and Ryan are old, but I built this building 2 years before they were born. So I showed them what we did down there. And what an eye-opener for me for this little trip was we were there from 77 to about 2000, about 23 years. And it occurred to me that our new facility, I think you guys have both been out there, we've been there about the same amount of time.
Wow.
That's cool.
That was really an eye-opener for me.
Definitely.
So we went through a lot. I don't want to go into all the caveats of what we did, but we grew the business through the 70s and 80s. We got into making drill bits for the coal mining, and scrap in the late 80s. Scrap was one leg of our business, and manufacturing coal mine bits was a second part. In the mid-90s, we formed a company called Cuda Tools. I had a partner, John Greenwell, and we formed a separate corporation to separate the coal mining bit manufacturing from the scrap operation. And just about that time was a time where the company took off for a couple of reasons. We had, up to that time, I honestly kind of got sidetracked with the bit making operation. I didn't spend as much time with the scrap operation as I had been. And about the late 80s, 90s, we discovered industrial type scraps. I had a chance to purchase a large lot from a company that they were a manufacturing company, but they didn't,
Yeah. So you were getting all your scrap from these same customers that you had just regionally here then, before that?
Regionally, but we had spread out. We coal mining, oil and gas.
But it was localized. When you say industrial, what do you mean? Like it was?
Well, before we got into the industrial stuff, we were Oklahoma, Texas, Montana, some, Virginia, West Virginia. So central to a little bit west for the mining side.
Let me interject there just a little bit. I'll make sure I'm following. So when we're using the word industrial, what we're talking about is like heavy manufacturing. So think about automotive, aerospace. That's what they call industrial scraps. Mm-hmm. So there are massive streams of all kinds of scraps that come out of those. So like a Boeing location, for example, there's going to be everything from tungsten to super alloys to just the cheap of the cheap, just straight steel or tin is going to come out of that. At that time, before then, we had really only dealt in areas that were straight tungsten. So that was mainly mining and construction.
So now you started taking all kinds of
scraps. So when he
scraps.
says industrial scraps, that's getting, and up until that point, we really thought we were in the biggest industry.
Tungsten.
Yeah. No. The biggest industry being mining and like oil and gas.
Oh, okay.
And maybe at one point oil and gas could have been close. Mm-hmm. But from an industrial perspective,
it eclipsed the other. Yeah.
It's like right now it's about three or four times, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So like scrap is the lion's share of your business. No,
that's the backbone
even now
of our business.
Okay.
Yeah, that's our core business.
Yeah, so I cut you off. You were talking about getting into the industrial scraps, and
so up until the late 90s, we did the mining grade, which just to give you a scale, it's about 20, maybe at the time was 25% of total tungsten consumption. But what I hadn't seen and didn't get into was the industrial, which is carbide drills, inserts, anything that turns a piece of metal. And like Cliff said, it's manufacturing. So it's about 50 or 60% of tungsten consumption. So I was forced I took this chance to buy this scrap from this tungsten production place that they didn't want, stuff they couldn't use. I got it cheap, but it was like 400,000 pounds. It was over $500,000 worth of stuff.
At that time, were you sure you could do much with it, or you was just going to gamble and see if you could?
Heck no, that's the key. That's the key.
That's awesome.
And I think that's part of the success of our business. I was willing to take a chance.
Stayed up a few nights after that.
Yeah.
Stayed up a few nights.
Yeah, we did. It's
That'll make you nervous.
No risk, no reward.
Yeah, but I got it cheap. But you can get a lot of stuff cheap.
Yeah.
But what are you going to do with it? So it forced our hand. Now, there was some mining grade things we knew in there that we could sell, and we sold back to the same company I bought it for, probably for 2 or 3 times
by
the
separating
price.
it out. Yeah.
Yeah, just by separating it.
Not probably, we did.
Wow. That's awesome.
We had to look at this. What is this? Where did this come from? And that was 1997, and I can tell you that a tungsten organization that we belong to now, some 25 years later, is our members, a worldwide tungsten company or organization. I went to their meeting in 1997 and got some exposure to some companies that bought. So we learned in a year, with less than a year, a whole new market share.
Just by that one risk.
By that one risk.
The demand of it.
Yeah. And then over the next 5 years, I'd say, until early 2000s, we ended up joining a Scrap Metal Association, which is pretty big. And it led us off in this direction where today we're at the high volume that we are is because of that move. I'd give it the main credit.
When you were saying you were looking at something, what's this? Like you didn't really know the difference between different kinds of metals to the degree you know it today. Is that what you mean? What's this?
Well, yeah, I didn't know the composition. Some of it you didn't know what it was used for.
Yeah.
Therefore, you didn't know where it would have generated. So we got in and learned
like
it.
Figuring out what the value of this one or this piece is.
A lot of times, lessons are really expensive. This one really paid off, but it was kind of a shot in the dark.
Was there anything to learn about how to salvage that tungsten off that? And I mean, not just on the back end reselling it, but like getting it back into a better state. Was there a learning process there, or did you already kind of have that process down?
To some extent, because there was what you call floor sweeps in there, which are powders.
Oh, okay.
And we had already fooled with some powders.
Okay.
To some extent, but not that much. So, yeah, that's a good point. It did kind of lead us off into that leg a little bit more. And then a few years after that, Cliff and Ryan started TPP in 2009. And so they took what we were doing at the time. We call them soft scrap sludges, swarfs. We were doing in 2009 when Cliff and Ryan started this. We were doing about a half a container, about 20,000 pounds a month of these soft scraps, if I remember right. And within 2 years, they had multiplied it by at least 8 times. They were doing 4 trucks as best I remember.
Wow.
A couple years later.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just by concentrating on it. But that really did, getting the floor sweeps and all, kind of, again, it educated us. I don't know how much we made on it or what we do, but we got an education.
It seems like a lot of future business came out of one procurement of scrap in that risk,
So about 2000, we left Hanson. We were on the farm about 8 years during World War II. And then we were at Hanson for about 23 years or so. Around 2000, we moved to our present location and been there since then, about another 23 years. So in that time, we've certainly grown in volume. In 2005 was the beginning of another super cycle in metals, which prices just took off. And again, being in the commodity side was really good for us. In 2008, with the Great Recession, 2008, 2009, we learned a lesson of how to hunker down. I think we come up with a term called Code Red.
Mm-hmm.
I said, listen, guys, I said, don't buy anything you haven't committed to. Buy what you said you would. Pay what you said you would. But let's sell what we've got. We've cut our inventories. It was a good lesson on this cyclical business that we're in. It was, of course, it had always been that way, but this was by far the biggest because we had had 2 or 3 big boom years. And then recovering from the Great Recession in 2011 and 12 was just gangbusters for us. And Cliff was coming along the whole time. He was gaining more and more experience and responsibility. So 2014, I think I was just after almost 50 years, 45 years, I guess. I really think I was getting tired. But I also saw the maturity in Cliff and responsibility. His management style is better than mine. I'm kind of a shoot from the hip. He's definitely a better manager, organizer, and with the people, he's a coach and a teacher. I'm kind of, I'll show you tell you what I want. I'll show you how to get it done.
Yeah.
But just kind of
you both have
me.
a good numbers head, and you have more of the entrepreneurial side. You tend to have more of the entrepreneurial side. Not that Cliff doesn't, but yeah, those kind of skills are usually starter skills.
Yeah.
And when you want to scale it, you got to bring some people around you, right? Yeah.
So I think it'll build on each other. And
yeah.
So I told Cliff in 2014, I think it was handed him the keys, and they make fun of me, if you can believe it or not. But I've got this little leather-bound notebook I've had since the 70s, where I keep all my notes. Just before, I'm still not that good with the contacts and the computers, but I got all my notes from the 70s. Customers, when I met them, what I paid, and all that stuff. So I handed him the book and made him president. And this last 10 years, pretty much the weight has been on his shoulders. I kind of eased out, and I guess 3 or 4 years ago, I think my title, I think now is chairman of the board, but he's president, CEO. It's all on his shoulders, and he's done one heck of a job with expanding it and going with it. I'm proud of him. I'm proud of the company.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's a good American story. It really is.
We were sitting in Ireland visiting one of those days. We were all together, and you guys were all rowdying around talking.
Yeah.
You know, me and him were off in the corner chatting, and I told him, I said, "Man, I'm gonna tell you what, Steve. You know, you did something here, not just building a company and earning money, but you've created a life, a community. You know, all these young guys, their families, all depending on and blessed by a lot of sacrifice and effort that you made. You know, you built more than just a company.
Oh, definitely.
Really, all these guys, the community.
I can see that. I believe
and
that.
there's a lot of love, you know, in that community. There's a lot of, you know, from an outsider's perspective, when I come in and see it, you know, I wanted you to know that. Yeah, there's something beautiful there that's more than money and more than a company.
Thank you.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't know how we're supposed to follow that, but that was good.
Let's have a word of prayer.
Let's pray. One question popping around in my mind as the company has grown and evolved. Obviously, you're the founder, so you're Generation 1 or G1. I'm G2, and I've got Evan and Claire coming behind us.
Right.
What do you see we talked about this the other day at the bar a little bit on stress. Like, how was stress for you in your 30s and 40s? How's it been for me in my 30s and 40s? But what do you see in culture today that you're like, okay, if I had to be CEO again for a year, I would absolutely hate this?
In our particular company?
No, or it can be, or it can just be in the culture that we live in the U.S. today.
In general, if you're running a company, and I think it's a little bit different for family owned, you have to set your own goals and targets. But in bigger businesses, it's not about making I can't say it's not about making a good product. They got to do that, but it's so fast paced. It's quarterly. You've got to have the numbers every quarter and hit the numbers. And even if you do good, but you don't do as good as what was expected of you,
Mm-hmm.
it's bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of companies are missing out on that. What a real grounded. Of course, I know we're not in the what do you call it, steel and concrete anchor. What do you call it? A building like Walmart.
Big box.
Yeah, big box, and with the technology. And I didn't understand that. Still don't understand it. But I didn't understand how the technology guys were making money. But of course, it's just the volume of people in contact. I understand that better now. But I think the fast pace, I guess, and expectations.
Yeah. That
There seems to be a just for me when I think back about the Carnegies, the Vanderbilts, the Henry Fords, the J.P. Morgans. I wonder if, as a nation in general, that we've gotten a little soft on just really what it takes to build something great, and that attrition for what it costs settles in pretty quick. So, like,
What kind of attrition? What do you mean?
spending attrition. So, like, for example,
To pay in advance for something you want a later fruit.
yeah. So, for example, we
game.
come out of World War II. Dwight D. Eisenhower sees the Autobahns throughout Germany, and he comes back and creates the Eisenhower interstate system.
Right.
And that was done over a period of 20 or 30 years.
Yeah.
I don't think we have the stamina to get
for a
that.
long game.
I don't think we have the there's like too much there's too much in-party fighting to really be able to get that done.
Yeah.
Because what happens is by the time one administration kind of gets the ball moving, then it's like it comes off the rails.
Yep.
And I think we see that in business a little bit too, to where it's like, okay, I've got to deliver to my shareholders.
Yeah.
And
Quarterly.
Yeah. And so the ability,
You can't play the long game
Yeah.
because you got to win this little short game.
yeah. So the ability to do long-term big projects that are going to yield better for society, I think we're not seeing those as much. Now we're seeing them in AI and in some of the SaaS companies and other things like that, but just in manufacturing, things of that nature, it's really tough to see that.
Yeah, like big paradigm shifting things often have in the Amazons of the world and the Microsofts of the world and the Apples of the world because, well, not government, but maybe in some of those more entrepreneurial kind of companies that are driven by the founders, you see a little bit of that.
Yeah.
At least early on.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know Elon Musk has received a lot of money from the government, but you take the amount of personal investment and the personal risk that he's taking. And I'm not trying to take a shot at Biden, but whenever, you have a U.S. company like that who has made all the investment that he's made, everything that he's done, and then Biden has an EV summit and he doesn't even invite Elon.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because he's on the other team.
He's just not on Biden's team.
Yeah.
And because, so he invites General Motors and everybody else and touts their success, and they've had zero success. No success to speak of.
Yeah.
They've had zero success at all. I mean, right now, Ford is unwinding their EV plants to go back to making ICE engines. So it's like, so I just kudos on founders for you everybody that's out there that's tuned in and listening, that's like, hey, I'm going to, I think a lot of times people feel like they look at a Jeff Bezos and they're like, well, I know why you did this, because he's riding around in the yacht that he's riding around in, but that's not why he did it. There is a ton of good that's been created out of his sacrifice. Everybody forgets that image where he had Amazon spray painted on a piece of paper, and that was the Amazon sign in his office.
Exactly. Starting in a garage.
Yeah. So the willingness to continue to do that. And one of the things that I understand that I'll just give you some props for, and I think probably other founders who are listening in, is a lot of founders just keep reinvesting in the business. There's a lot that could be taken out. And there's a lot of people who are in prison and should go to prison for how they do their business. But I watched you do that. That was a great model for me. I try to do that. Now, everybody knows I spend way more money personally than you do. That's an inside joke. But yeah, it was a huge sacrifice you made, and I appreciate the effort there for doing that. I don't think the average person has any idea just how much goes back into a business, and you don't put it you don't put it in your pocket.
Yeah, like I'm not going to do something for myself. I'm going to build another building, or I'm going to buy this equipment, or I'm going to bet on the next 10 years of our business.
Yeah. Most people don't see that. It's like a rock group. Overnight, they're a success. Oh, it wasn't overnight, It was years and years in the dives. But yeah, I'd say the first over 55 years now, I didn't put a lot, relatively speaking, money in my pocket. I plowed it back in, had my personal home hawked to the bank to get the lines of credit.
Yeah.
I wasn't afraid of doing that because I had confidence in myself and our company and what we were doing. But same thing with Bezos and Musk. You're talking about, I think Musk, after he sold that, was it PayPal at first?
PayPal, yeah.
He put most of the money back in and he laid it on the line. And and then look at him now. Well, look what he's got now. But both those guys, they're just amazing what they did, and they're fortunate enough to be in an industry, the bit business and tungsten business, not that good, but what they went into, kudos for them for how they developed it.
Yeah.
Steve, you guys have experienced some great success in your industry and what you've done. And almost in every founder story I've ever heard or been a part of, there was a moment somewhere in the early days where it's like, I don't know if this is going to make it, or it looked like maybe quitting or failing could happen. Was there a moment in the Tunco story where
it's like, I want to go back to working for somebody, give me a check on Friday?
Like it got really close that I'm not sure what I think about this, or if this is actually going to fly and get up off the ground?
Hugely.
Yeah.
Yes, it did, very much. So through the 70s, start 69, through the 70s, we rode to inflation. I'd go buy these bits, and before I could get them processed, the tungsten was worth more before I could get it sold. So I was in a fortunate area for the business that I had fell into or stayed with. In the early 80s, Mr. Reagan come on and Paul Volcker, and they raised the interest rates. They were going to kill that inflation, and they did. But it's a tough time for industrial type stuff,
right.
Oil and gas and tungsten business. And we just kind of scrubbing by the early 80s. And I took a real job. One time I was offered a job in 1984 by a company in Madisonville that they manufactured mining bits. And so I waited out, and I thought, struggling. I thought, well, give it a shot. So I took this job of sales, kind of in the tri-state, Kentucky, Illinois, Alabama. Well, I knew within a month or two that this wasn't for me. I felt like a lion in a cage. That's all I ever done to work for myself, But I stayed with it because the company at that time was owned by GTE Sylvania. They were kind of grooming me. I think I was 31, 32 at the time, to stay with the company and maybe go into management. They sent me to Detroit and some places for management school. I learned a lot, things that me as an entrepreneur didn't get exposed to, how a corporate works, how structure works. The sales experience was different. I stayed with it for 2 years. I gave them a long, at least a 6 month, what do you call it?
Notice or
notice.
whatever. Yeah.
And what I got out of that was, I told you earlier that we got into the bit making business. Well, that's what they did. And I learned how to make the bits. And before I left, I actually made a deal with this same company. I said, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to stay with it. You're wasting your time investing in me, but I want to go to the manufacturer. So they worked with me so I would manufacture retip tools for them. And that kind of lasted, a little partnership almost. That lasted for a little bit, but they wanted to keep me small potatoes, just here and there. Well, I didn't want to be small potatoes, so I got out. We ended up bumping heads and fell out, but that got us into the bit manufacturing business. And later on, like I said, we started a new corporation, and it lasted about 30 years. We sold that in 2016, I think. But it was a good run. But yeah, I wouldn't have had that opportunity, but I didn't quit. At the same time, I did not get rid of the company. I kept it on the side, and we had a fella run it for us. And for this 2 years, and it was kind of just, say, stagnant, flat, held its own. He paid his salary, and but it was dormant. But I waiting to rehatch. So so after I quit the job, we got back more into the scrap. But yeah, that was close. I'm glad I didn't just quit the tungsten business. I'm glad I did this experiment, took the job, but just sidebarred the business to some extent.
Fantastic.
Interesting.
So a lesson for all you entrepreneurs out there tuning in, don't ever make a supplier a competitor.
Yeah.
Because you end up with a Steve.
Right.
Yeah, good for us, bad for them. I don't think they're in business anymore. So yeah. So what are you doing now? Like, what do you like spending your time doing now that you're chairman and chief retiree?
Well, from the business side, I appreciate you getting with me about every week or two and keeping me posted. And we talk about some of the big things and just keeping me filled in and what's going on. Again, from the business side, I like to go to the big meetings we have. I think this year in November it's going to be Barcelona. So I guess I have to go to that.
It doesn't hurt your feelings, huh?
No, and as long as he'll buy my airplane ticket. And
he is on a fixed income.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I see how it is.
Yeah.
You got to help him out.
And I like going out to work. You say once a week, but it's probably not that often. But I like to say, I think a lot of them like to see the old man, just say hi and all that. And I like to stay in touch with them. So, but I'm not, all the weight, like I think I said earlier, is on this young man's shoulders. And I was out there, maybe back in the spring, and I kind of walked through the whole plant to saying hi to everybody and just kind of see what's going on. And they were in the process of moving a bunch of stuff, I think. But they had this operation moving here and this operation moving here. And I just thought to myself, I was like, my Lord, I'm glad I don't have to
I'm going to go home.
go home and think about
Pour me
all
some more
that
tea.
every day and all weekend. So it's really been an adaptation for me. The first, I think I owe you an apology. I think the first year I was telling people I'll give them a little bit of rope, but not enough to hang yourselves or something like that.
That was fair.
But it was
Did you reach in and grab the steering wheel every once in a while?
something, whatever that. But I was really wrong. I feel like when you step back, you need to let you've seen it in churches,
Yeah.
you've seen it in any kind of organization.
Well, it's just difficult. You have to redefine yourself, right?
Yeah. But all through life, we all have to redefine ourselves. But you have to make
over and over
some
again.
clear cuts.
Right.
But it took a little adjusting. So now I'm call myself retired without any embarrassment. So what I do is actually, Nan and I was going over our journal a couple of days ago, and because we had met with a person about our dietitian and stuff, and we was telling them how very little we eat out. But we got to going over our journal, and the last 2 years post-COVID, we've traveled almost 3.5 months. I've been out of my bed 3.5 months, over 100 days a month on the road somewhere, either Florida or overseas. Or
You like that, or you regret it, or what do you mean?
Oh, I do like it, but I didn't realize. I didn't. When we're gone, we don't eat at home. But I'm telling this dietitian, we never
eat out. But for 3.5 months, you were eating out.
Yeah. That was the point. I was saying we don't ever eat out, and I got to look at it and think, dang, we do eat out. And but so we travel a lot, and I'd say pre-COVID we traveled just as much, if not more. So we travel 3+ months a year, whether domestically or international. And I read a lot more. Try not to read the news the last few months. I've laid off that as far as the details, but I read a lot, and just don't sleep any more than I used to. But I say I kayak, I say I got a bicycle, we do stuff like that. But I'm almost lying because I don't do it enough to qualify.
You got an 84 Porsche I've seen before.
Yeah.
Or 83.
I drove it a couple of times.
84?
82.
82.
Well,
have you seen it?
I haven't.
Oh.
Yeah.
I've salivated over that.
Yeah, Paul wants you to leave that to him.
Yeah, you just, when you
but
go
I'm
off
enjoying
into
myself. I'm enjoying myself.
I wouldn't have it very long because I'm right behind you.
In this season, mentored, I know your son, obviously. Are there any other business leader relationships that have leaned in and picked your brain? And has that been a part of?
Oh, yeah, everybody wants money.
Exactly. That's what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on a couple boards.
Yeah. How's that coaching aspect been at this season of your career and retirement, right? Just passing on lessons to others.
I would say I really haven't been involved in something like that. I think, when I was younger, I got involved in some stuff, working more with, when I was younger, juvenile delinquents. I was junior probation officer, stuff like that. But no, I haven't got into stuff that I probably should, but I haven't.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
other business leaders and coaching them. And
you and Nan have the Learning Center here in town, which is big on education for. So just a little bit about the Learning Center. And
so my wife Nan, a few years ago, she wanted to do something to give back, so we started this 501c3. I'll give you the address and email where you can send the money. So it's called the Learning Center in Madisonville, and it's a tutoring. Madisonville's 18,000, 20,000. It's a small population, so they teach just straight up tutoring. Kids need help, ACT help, dyslexia, reading, and mostly after school. In the summer they have camps, but it's really inexpensive, hourly rates. Even some, I think people have donated, so kids get a scholarship. have about 80 kids in attendance, which is not bad.
Yeah.
So that was her baby, and I help her with that. I help her from the finance side. I maybe teach a few summer camps, science and stuff like that. But so that's one thing that I'm proud of that we give back in. Yeah.
And what's the name of that again?
The Learning Center of Madisonville.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Is that a franchise or just something she started straight from
No,
scratch?
we started to do it. We looked at Huntington and Sylvan.
Yeah, I've seen some of those.
Yeah.
But you kind of follow that model.
Yeah, we actually were going to do look to do a franchise, but Madisonville wasn't big enough.
Yeah, that's how.
So we decided we'd do our own. So it's what we did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm on a few boards. You know, it's just enjoyable.
What's the one thing that you get excited the most? You said you travel. In this season, what excites you? Like whether it's a hobby, whatever it is, what puts the biggest smile on your face right now?
Well, you don't really want me to tell you that. I'm not that old.
Misfit.
Yeah, misfit. That's
Now
awesome.
you know.
Well, we get an idea though.
Paul's out.
Paul's out. We lost Paul.
Oh, you. I guess it might be a little selfish, but traveling and she and I both like to travel together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we really enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I guess one of my intermediate goals is. I'm not a spring chicken anymore, and I like it, and I won't feel like it one of these days.
Right.
So we're going to do that as long as we can and feel like it and enjoy it.
Favorite places, like when you think
I
about it.
always get that. I like
Oh,
them.
really?
I like them. Yeah, everybody wants to know, you know, Italy or here or there. It's they're all different.
Yeah.
They're all good. I mean, favorite places would be like Cliff and Evan and I went 4 or 5 years ago to Guatemala sail fishing. Traveling and saltwater bill fishing is probably one of my highlights. I have to do that by myself or with some of the guys because my wife, all she does is chum when we take her. So I've blackballed her from going on anything on the ocean. So
that kind of chum.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I see.
Yeah. So we so
She's doing her own chumming.
Yeah.
Australia has been wonderful for that.
Oh wow.
But as far as just straight up sightseeing and stuff, they're just totally different. Went to South Africa on the safaris with camera, good. Asia quite a bit. China, of course. My wife is originally from there, and just all over. So I mean, that's kind of my answer.
It's kind of like what don't you like, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I like it all.
Yeah, I hadn't met a bad. Probably better if I said what was the worst one, but I.
Yeah. I'm like that. I like every place for some reason.
I love to travel.
Yeah. So you might plug this in. Well, you guys were touching on this a while ago. People always ask me this about how you run the business or what motivated you, I guess, or what drove you. But I guess this is pretty cliche or pretty vanilla. But I really, after I started out early on, I dropped out of college. Thought I could make a go with this. I really just run the business with the principle of I want to grow the business. You know, we went from there to here to here to here to here, and later on, our growth went like that. And then the last several years, it's more like a hockey stick with the growth. I guess it's because of him, but. I always want to grow the business and keep it in the black. If you don't make money, you can't stay in business.
Right.
My goal, honestly, was never to be wealthy or make a lot of money. My father gave me some of the best advice that I had. I guess I skipped this on you, but I remember sitting out on the farm one time and talking to him. I said, Dad, you know, I was spending hundreds a month or a week or something, and now it's like up to thousands. And he gave me this old advice. He says, well, listen, he said, you just keep your head down, work hard, try to make money, and don't worry about the cars and the big houses till later on, and they'll come. So I guess, I don't know if I passed that on.
Oh, you tried. You tried. But I was determined to have the cars from the get-go.
I was I don't know if he'd use the term frugal, or I think when I was in Boy Scouts.
You're like Buffett. You're thrifty.
That's right. I was Boy Scout, and one of the laws, the 12 laws, is to be thrifty, and I think I've accomplished that. To a great fault sometimes.
You have accomplished
that. Could be a whole nother episode.
Yeah, you have accomplished.
I remember my dad reading a paper in the living room, and I was sitting there thinking, man, he's got the paper up, you know, like the typical thing where the paper's covering him, and I was thinking, I'm going to ask him for a quarter. I was trying to work up the courage to ask him for a quarter, and then I thought, nah, it ain't worth it. That'll teach you something, you know. It's just like,
oh yeah,
nah, it's not worth it.
Well, just kind of winding down here a little bit. Who are some people that, I mean, this is the Misfit Social Pod. So who are some misfits that inspired you over the years? Alive or dead?
Yeah. Well, I thought you were going to ask me what misfits I knew, and I was going to say besides in this room. But
well, that too. Your SEC buddies, clearly.
Yeah.
If he's got channel locks, he's a misfit.
He brings channel locks to a wrestling
in your
match.
back pocket.
Yeah.
To a wrestling match.
Yeah, you might be a redneck.
You might be a misfit.
Yeah, a misfit.
A redneck.
Yeah.
You know, there's two or three people that come to my mind when you said that. I tried to look up. We watched a movie a couple of nights ago about Bobby Fischer, the chess player.
Yeah.
And which I remember those games with the Russian that he played and all that. But somebody more close to home, there's two or three people that I know, and as far as I know, they're still alive, so I don't want to name their names, but one in particular, and you know, Cliff, he was in the mining business, had a job working at the mines, and he was an engineer, sharp as a tack, and but like you would in the coal mines, everybody gets rubbed. I don't care where your job is or what you're doing, you get rubbed. But he really was a misfit. He was like a square peg trying to go in a round hole. But this fellow has come on through his life, and he's traveled the world. He's traveled around rescuing mines, some in Russia, South Africa. He has become such an expert in his field. But he's, I don't know if you want to call it a oddball, or some people would say weird, which we try not to use that word, but that's how people would view a misfit, I think. If it's an engineer type, you might call him an egghead. But I have learned, him and a couple other people, I have learned with age, and it might have took me a while. I tried to be accepting of everybody, but sometimes you just judge people. But some of those people at one time, I thought they were goofy or misfits. I have watched them, and I have learned from them, and they have become great in what they do. And when you have conversation with them and see the world from their perspective, it's not weird. It makes sense. So I think maybe what you guys are trying to do to show misfits are not misfits. There's a spot for them. We all fit somewhere. But I can think of three people in particular that I have learned that lesson. To, you know, Paul wears that goofy hat over there. You know, it's he's a weirdo. Yes.
Bad example. But anyway, I get what you're saying.
So that's I don't want to name anybody, but I do
Besides
agree.
Paul.
Besides Paul.
In his goofy hat.
What about Lincoln? I mean, how do you feel about him? Was he a little bit of a misfit social kind of guy?
Clearly, I think, yeah. I think, like a lot of people, Lincoln's always one you've studied a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, well, first off, he is from Kentucky.
Yeah.
And up from nothing guy, which is kind of
let
a
the
fun
record
story.
show he is from Kentucky.
Yeah.
Born in Kentucky.
Raised doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Born matters.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I've been in Jerusalem. I saw where Jesus was born, and I saw where Abraham Lincoln was born up in Hodgesville. Jesus wasn't born in Jerusalem, was he?
I was just gonna go with it.
Let's roll with
We're
it.
just gonna roll with it.
We'll edit that
we
out.
try to be disarming here, so we're not worried about it. Yeah. All right. Well, Pops, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for asking me. It's quite an honor. Quite an honor.
It's an honor for me to be able to sit here and have this long form conversation with you and share with the world how he is a misfit and to remind our listeners to always be a misfit.
Well, I wish you had listened to me before.
Which time?
Way back.
All right. Well, I think we're going to head out and check out some stuff outside. So we'll roll on out.
All right. That was fun.
Let's go.